Howdy everybody, Steve here, KM9G. Today I've got a portable power station for you. This one promises to be pretty interesting and pretty powerful. You can tell by the size of the box there's a lot of energy stored up in there. Let's get it opened up and figure out what all we can do with this thing. Real quick, right on the outside of the box here, we have quite a few things that we need to talk about. We have pure sine wave AC output. We have fans for cooling. We have plenty of safety features, overcurrent, overvoltage, overheating, short circuiting, all kinds of stuff that you need. When it comes time to recharge this thing, 2 hours gets you 2,048 watt hours back into the battery. From 0 to 100% in 2 hours is fast. It's got a 4.9-inch screen. It's got a low battery reminder. When the battery level falls lower than 10%, a built-in alarm will beep to remind you to recharge it, so you never forget right when you need it that you forgot to charge this thing 2 months ago when you last used it. Built-in BMS and a 2048 watt battery. Awesome. And then right here, this is the main thing that I am looking for. This has a 25 amp output at 12 volts. That's going to be very useful for the kind of things that we like to do here on this channel. We've got accessory bags. I like it. So let's get this out and see what all we have in here. An AC wall charging plug and XT90s. Man, those are big boys. XP90 connector to MC4 connector. Sweet. First things first, my work is never done here. Let's get rid of these things. Geez. All right, on the front of the unit, we've got that massive screen that we were talking about. We have all of the different USB ports. I like that there are 4 USB-C and 2 USB-A. Usually there's a whole mess of USB-A and only 1 or 2 USB-C, and I run out of USB-C plugs. And so this is actually really nice to see all of these. You've got 3 20 watters and 1 100 watter. So you can be able to charge your laptop off of this. That's very nice. Here is that XT60 port that puts out 25 amps. We'll test that out. 12 volts, 3 amps, 12 volts, 3 amps on 5525 barrel jacks. A cigarette lighter plug that puts out 10 amps. Big power button here. The light for the front in case you wanted to see what you were doing. And then this has kind of an interesting design. I really like what they're doing here. On top, there is a little hatch where you can store the accessory cables instead of that little bag. This is actually really nice because what I find is a lot of my power stations wind up with their cables stored somewhere else, and then when I need something, I can't find what I need. And then your AC ports are over here on the side. You get 6 20 amp AC receptacles and 2400 watts total output. So you can run your coffee maker, your microwave, your outdoor grill, whatever you need to run off of this thing that can draw less than 2400 watts, which is pretty much everything, can be done. And then over here on the other side, we have the charging input side of things. This is where that big XT90 goes. And then that's where the regular wall power cord comes from. Let's see if I can see this thing outside. 26% charge. So step 1, we got to get this thing charged up. Yeah, you guys can't see that at all. Let's get it inside and see if we can see it inside any better. This thing was very easy to see outside in Mark 1 eyeball, but the camera just kept focusing on the reflection on the screen because of the bright sunlight out there. Inside, this thing is massive and easy to read. You can see it from across the room. I dig it. All right, let's get this thing plugged in and get its initial charge running. Here is my AC power cord, and in the side it goes. You can hear it clicking all the relays and firing up all the power cells. And now we are ready to start charging. And it is, you might have seen it said 50 hertz earlier. Now that I've got it plugged into a 60 hertz source, it's telling me 60 hertz is the name of the game. And it's going to start sorting out what all it's going to do and get the right amount of juice going into it. And we're going to see that power estimate go down. There it is, 2 hours, just like it said on the box. Perfect. We'll be back in 2 hours when it's full. That XT60 port on the front is nice if you have one of those fancy FX4CR radios that takes XT60 power input directly and you already have one of those cables. But for the rest of us that use Anderson power poles, they make a power pole cable with an XT60 on the other end. So let's get this thing plugged in and see what kind of power we're getting out of it. All right, let's take our multimeter probes, positive to positive, negative to negative, hit the on button. There we go, 13.3 volts out. Excellent. We have reached 100% charge, so it's time to get it onto the discharge bench. All right, we have our DC load device running here, and you can see we've got 0 volts and 0 amps being drawn. And over here it says 000.00 amp hours on the meter. So let's see how many amp hours we can pull out of this thing. So on. And we want to turn on DC power, which is then going to start sending electricity out here, and we're pulling 9.19 amps out on the load. Let's see if we can get this thing up to an even 10. There we go. 13 volts, 10 amps. Let's see how long she'll run. We'll come back when it's all done. It's showing 14 hours estimated on the output. It's showing that the cigarette lighter plug, the DC barrel jacks, and the XT60s are running, which is this section over here. And we are pulling 139 watts and converting it into heat. We made it all the way down to 10%, and I just got an alarm that went off telling me that it was at 10%. It beeped 3 times, took a pause, beeped 3 more times, took a pause, and then hasn't beeped at all. So it's not terribly intrusive, which is nice, but if you miss it, you're gonna miss it. I still have 81 minutes remaining while I am drawing 10 amps out of the unit. So that's still quite a bit of juice left in the box. Plenty of time to make some adjustments. We have reached 0% output. And if we take a look at the power meter, it's telling us 126.02 amp hours. Nice. So on that first discharge, I only got about 1,700 watt hours out of it. So it's a decent battery, and it's a decent solar charge station and inverter and all that other kind of jazz, but it doesn't have the rated capacity. I'm gonna run the test a second time. It is dark outside, and we have reached bingo fuel on the second test. So 0, and shut down. And then if we take a look, we can get that to focus. It is showing 133.28 amp hours and 1,728.28 watt hours, which is not 2,048 watt hours. All right, so I am back in the lab at the workbench here, and I have done a little bit of math, and I don't like to math on camera because I'm, quite frankly, really not that good at it. I blame public schools growing up. However, what I found out was the watt hour difference. I can kind of account for it. I can kind of see it. First off, this is a 52.1 volt battery pack internally. So we've got to convert that from 52.1 volts to 12 volts for the DC output. There is some losses involved in that. According to ChatGPT, it is somewhere around, where is it? Let's just assume 90% efficient at doing that job. Now on top of that, I have my XT60 to Anderson power pole connector, and then I have the leads on my power tester. And if you mismatch the gauge of the wires, which is possible, if you add more connectors, which I did, if you use little tiny screw terminals, which I did, and you use not the highest rated equipment, the Maker Hawk is fine, don't get me wrong, but what I'm saying is that these inefficiencies compound a bit. So if we take the 2,048 watt hours that's advertised on the battery pack and we account for the 90% efficiency in conversion, I would expect, according to ChatGPT, 1,800 to 1,850 watt hours of inefficiency losses. So from 2048 to 1,800, great. Then you add in the wires that I have, and I would expect some more efficiency losses. So I can account for all but 72 watt hours of loss on this. So I'll throw that 72 watt hours on the cables that I'm using, and then 72 watt hours over 13 hours, it's fine. It does the thing, and what I really like about it is it has high output DC. And what that means for us is that we can run our 100 watt radio. So I'll do a demonstration of that coming up. The reason why I bring this up, the reason why this part is important, is because the typical power station solar generator device that you see on the market only puts out about 8 amps, maybe 10 amps max, which is QRP. So the best radio that you're going to get to use off of this, which is a good radio, don't get me wrong, is the Xiegu G90, and that only puts out 20 watts worth of RF on HF. So I'm looking forward to 100 watts output on HF. Here's the big reason why I wanted to show this to you. I am plugged in via XT60 port, which then goes to Anderson power pole conversion, which then winds its way up to the Yaesu 857D. This is a 100 watt radio. So we are going to turn it on. There we go. We've got our radio on, and it is set to FM mode. And if I go into the deep menu, the RF power set is to 100 watts. And we'll come back out here and we will key it up on FM mode. And it keys up just fine. We are still keyed up on the mic, and you can see we're putting out 188 watts. Looking good. Let's change the mode. Let's change the mode over to AM. Key up. And same thing, 100 watts this time. 100 watts of DC power going out into the radio, which is then sending out to the airwaves. Nice. And you can see it says 12.9 on the screen up there. And there is no output amount down here. But she's able to handle it. And that right there is the reason why I think this power station is perfect for the kind of things that we do. Take this thing camping, make yourself a cup of coffee, charge up your cell phones, run your HF radios at 100 watts off of the 25 amp DC output port. Good to go. This thing is about $1,000. $1,000 for a 130 to 140 amp hour battery might not be too bad compared to other things that are out there. And then you add in the inverter, the high output DC, the USB adapter, the solar charge controller, and you start to add up a bunch of things. So I think that is a decision that can be made pretty logically, pretty intelligently. There is a link in the description down below for some more info on this thing. This year, I am on a quest to reach 100,000 subscribers, and you can help. Right below the video, there is a subscribe button. Doesn't cost you anything. If you do want to support the channel, there is a join button right next to that, or there's Patreon links down in the description. And I would greatly appreciate anything that you could do in order to help me reach my goal of 100,000 subscribers this year. In the meantime, there is a video right over here I think you might enjoy next. Thanks for being awesome. I'll see you over there.